What I'm going to talk about is intelligent search, and this whole track is called The Future of Search. You've already heard, both in this session, and I'm sure if you've been in other sessions during the conference, you've heard other things that could be applied to the future of search. Intelligent search is what I'm calling all of the things that are new and different and not particularly old school. So I'm going to start out with a question. Whose intelligence are we going to use in the future? Is it going to be totally human intelligence? Probably not. Because actually what you may be thinking you are doing today using human intelligence may in fact have a component in there of artificial intelligence, whether you know it or not. And I'm not actually wedded to the term artificial intelligence because I don't think it is artificial, and I don't think it is something that is the exact opposite of human intelligence. And so I really prefer the term augmented intelligence because I think that's really what it is. It is there to help us do our jobs better. Does this mean we are going to have robo-librarians in our future? Well, if it comes to shelving books, sure, why not? Would you rather spend your time doing some sort of exotic research that's intellectually challenging, or would you rather go shelve books? Okay, if it's a really stressful day, I understand there is some calming that goes along with shelving books until you find the ones that are misshelved and you go crazy over that. But anyway, the technology that is in use in other areas is actually going to change what we do. And there was an example that came up at lunch today that I added in here as a bullet point of how does artificial intelligence affect interlibrary loan? Probably something you haven't considered yet. But one of the people at my lunch table said, you know, if you look at businesses that have trucks out delivering things, there are predictive analytics that are now in use to try and determine which truck is going to break down where so that they can prevent that from happening. Well, if our interlibrary loan system relies upon vehicles taking an item from one library to another, we could use that same kind of supply chain predictive analytics to guide us to a more efficient and effective interlibrary loan system. It had actually not occurred to me until lunch today, so I'm sharing new knowledge with you. At least it's my new knowledge. So what do I mean by artificial or augmented intelligence? Well, it's all of these things, and they are not mutually exclusive. One of the worst things about technology is that when it is developing, when it is in flux, the terminology is far from set in concrete. And so you'll read something about artificial intelligence, but really it's machine learning. Or you'll read something about predictive analytics, and really it's deep learning. Or you'll read something about how information is being displayed, and it's actually graph technology that's behind it. But nobody says that. So there's all of these things going on, and just because one term is used doesn't mean that that is mutually exclusive from some of the other terms that are on this list. Well, they're not all new technologies. I'm always entranced by the people who say, wow, you know, NLP, natural language processing, that is so cool and it's so new and it's been around for decades. Just like semantic search, another one that people keep telling me is so new. Really? Really? 1950s, come on. But the whole idea of the technology being old is irrelevant because it is in fact new in that the computing power that we have today is nowhere near what we had in the 50s. It isn't even like what we had 20 years ago. We've got terabytes of data, and what computers can do that we can't is find patterns. And that's extremely important in a lot of different areas. So if you think about artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence, the idea is basically brain enhancement. It's trying to act like a human brain, but at hugely greater levels in terms of data processing. What we are looking at now for a lot of these technologies is, in terms of search, is how do you determine what intent of the search is? How do you know, without a reference interview, what the person entering the query into a search box really wants to know? This is quite difficult. If you're Google, you haven't really got a clue, although they say they do. If you are meeting someone face-to-face in your library, you have visual cues. You know sort of vaguely what age they are. Although I have to say, my public library just sent out a question asking me what my age was so that it could better tailor search results for me of books that I would be searching in the catalog. Thank you. That was my reaction. Like, you're not serious, are you? Apparently they were. Anyway, old-style search, you put in a word and the system searched that word. It was not creative. It did not build in synonyms for you, back office type work. It just thought you knew what you wanted. And as all of you know from working with other people, they often ask you things that aren't really what they want to know. They're the things that they think you can do, but they may not be what they actually want to know. So what happens with all of these artificial intelligence technologies? Do they have any creativity? That's an open question. What is the training set? And that is a very important question. And it has to do both with how do they determine what is a relevant answer, and it has to do with bias. If you train a search engine on a small set of biased documents, guess what? The results you get out of that engine are going to be biased. So you have to look at the size of the training set and what was in the training set. So let's talk about everybody's favorite search engine that they love to hate. That would be Google. Billions of queries every day, obviously more than any of us do. They use machine learning extensively to try and determine what would be the best answer to your query. Well, all of this relevancy is based on popularity. That's what the machine learning algorithms are doing. Well, popular does not necessarily equate to facts, truth, or anything that a librarian might want to know. If I search for pizza, and isn't it amazing how many examples that are put forth to us by people who are, say, computer programmers, use pizza as their example. But let's just suppose I put into Google the word pizza. What does it think I want to know? Where to find one, exactly. They want to show me the closest pizza joint. Meanwhile, I'm doing a research project on cheese. What cheese is the most popular, which melts the best on a pizza, which is the most easily frozen that still tastes like cheese instead of cardboard when you heat up the frozen pizza. Google is not going to tell me that without a great deal of manipulation on my part, because relevancy is based on popularity. Now, what they are trying to do, and this is the good part of it, they're using neural matching to try and build all these synonyms, because what they can do, given that the training set is billions of queries, they can actually determine if somebody says this word and clicks on these hits, then it's likely that this word is associated with the word that was in the query box. And so they're building this whole set of synonyms behind the scenes. And it usually works. It only doesn't work when you're trying to do something that's truly obscure and you really want just the word you entered. And it's very hard, even when you use Google's verbatim, to make it stop using all those wonderful synonyms that it's built behind the scenes. We used to have a command in Google that would do synonym lookups, and it left, as many other advanced search queries have. And the reason the advanced search things are gone is because Google has, using artificial intelligence techniques, has figured out how to do it behind the scenes. Same thing happens with personalization. If I did enough searches on pizza where I was looking for cheese and frozen foods and stuff like that, sooner or later it would actually figure out that I was not looking for the closest restaurant. Google Lens was mentioned earlier today by Greg, I think. How many of you have actually been in this room the whole day? Oh, you lovely people, you. My goodness. Okay, so you heard Greg talk about Google Lens. What's happening in Google Lens? They have machine learning algorithms. They put it through TensorFlow, which is a Google product. They use the Google image database as its training set. It's huge. So we know that the training set was pretty good, and the more people who use Lens, the bigger that training set gets, because that's Google's way. It doesn't stop. It keeps on with its machine learning. So to build its intelligence. And the underlying display mechanism is, in fact, the knowledge graph. Greg also talked about Google Doodle, and he actually played stuff, which I'm not going to do because he did that, but it was trained on 306 of Bach's choral harmonizations to make that doodle work and create the harmonizations that it did. So let's move on to Bing here. It's still a big database on which it can learn. It is a little more involved with semantic technologies than is Google. It's trying desperately to use artificial intelligence techniques to parse the query to try and determine, what really is the intent? What are you doing when you're looking for a pizza? Are you looking for a pizza? Are you researching pizza? Big difference. All of the web search engines are looking at voice. Voice search is becoming the preferred mechanism. And to do that, you have to do very sophisticated speech-to-text work. So the thing that Bing announced last week was that they've upgraded this speech-to-text capabilities to make it sound more human. And it's got, as Greg mentioned, all these intelligent answers. And this is based on the deep learning that Bing is doing. So it'll do things like this. So I asked here, what year did Pembroke College change its name? Now let me say, right off the bat, Pembroke College is ambiguous. There was a Pembroke College that changed its name. That was in Rhode Island. There is another Pembroke College in North Carolina, and then there is Pembroke as an Oxford University college. Bing actually understood that what I wanted to know was about a name change, and it gives me this little, basically a knowledge graph of the history of Pembroke College in Rhode Island, which was the first hit. It was what I was looking for. It does comparisons. This is coffee bad for you? You get the same answer if you ask, is coffee good for you? Because it's doing a comparison. So on one side, it's got all the bad stuff about coffee. On the other side, it's got all the good stuff about coffee. And down here, it actually asks for feedback down at the bottom of that, in case you didn't like the answer. A lot of things that happen that we pretty much take for granted, like autocomplete, autosuggest, did you mean, others searched for. This is all based on machine learning. It happens much more frequently in web search engines than it does in the subscription engines, but it happens there as well. Sentiment analysis is very interesting. I used to get asked a lot of questions back before we understood what sentiment analysis could do, and it was things like, find me articles in favor of this particular topic. Find me articles that hate this particular take on a topic. It's very hard to do until you have artificial intelligence techniques that can do sentiment analysis. But to go back to this did you mean stuff, so I purposely said, I'm going to misspell the word learning. Bing came back and said it was including results for machine learning. Did you want results only for the way I misspelled it? Google says it's showing results for machine learning, search instead for the misprint that I wanted. Not everybody loves this. The guy who invented autocorrect should burn in hello. It is a magazine in the UK, yes, quite right. But I don't think that's what was meant by that particular topic. Yes, okay, algorithms. Web search results are based on algorithms. We have no idea what they are. The word that's been floating around today, starting with our keynote speaker, is transparency. There's no transparency. I loved it when Amy was talking earlier and she had a little problem, so she phoned the help desk for Westlaw. Yeah, anybody ever tried to phone Google's help desk and say, I got a problem with a search? Ha! Not going to happen. So this is really the black box of search. We don't know how it works. We do know it changes all the time. We do know that Google at least has about 200 different signals that it uses to create its algorithms, and we do know that it changes all the time. We do know there are sandboxes out there where you may get a search result, the guy sitting next to you doing exactly the same search gets different results. 10 minutes later, same search, same people, same room, same results. What happened? One of them was in a sandbox. Do we know which one? Well, no, we don't. We don't really know much of anything. Which brings us to the question of what does relevancy mean to an algorithm? And the answer is, we have no idea. Another very interesting topic that has floated around, and this goes to Amy's book on fake news, one of the things that is happening with fakeness is this idea of generative modeling, where all these people here are fake, and so now that we have so many websites that include photographs of people or that purport to be photographs of people, what happens here is they've got these, and then they combine the two. So this one is a combination of this and this. This is a combination of this and this. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating, and you think about what could you do with that that would be good. One of the things you could do with these is use them as personas if you were designing something. The bad thing is if you claim these are actual people with actual opinions posting on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. We also have the issue of algorithmic writing, which is pretty interesting. We have the University of Michigan that's come up with something that does automated text analysis, and it's all using NLP, natural language processing. We have narrative science that is writing many of the sports stories that you read because they're pretty programmatic, as are earnings reports in the business press. It's all data-driven. Feed the data into it, it writes a story. There is no journalist involved. No journalist was harmed in writing this story. That actually used to be the tagline down at the bottom of Google News when it first came out. It was there for about 2 months. Automated Insights is another company that creates stories, reports from data. You feed it data, it writes stuff for you. Northern Light, I could, sometime I'll go into the history with you on Northern Light if you have any interest in that at all. Predates Gawker, in fact. But they have one site that's free, which is the Ask Millie site. But the company itself uses machine learning, and it takes market research reports, feeds it into their machine learning, which also uses TensorFlow, and it automatically summarizes the research reports, the results of the market research reports that's fed into the system. So my question is, looking forward to our subscription-based A&I databases, could algorithmic writing start writing all those for us? If you are writing reports yourself, could you use this to write a summary, write an executive summary for a report? Scholarly literature, lots of stuff going on here with digital humanities, digital social sciences. A couple of things I just wanted to point out to you. Semantic Scholar uses, obviously, semantic technologies to build a database of computer science and medicine. Over in the UK, we see iris.ai. It's using algorithms for word usage frequency, and it determines relevance based on the word usage frequency. If you use dimensions from digital science, yes, built on various AI technologies. If you're in the medical sphere, take a look at Quirtle. And wisdom.ai is doing a lot with publishers of scholarly literature. So, Richard mentioned UNO. I didn't know he was going to do that. My slides were done before his, so I would just point out, he says. I would just point out that George Plosker did write an article in the May-June issue of Online Searcher, and the article is up for free. He summarized a meeting that UNO presented at for the San Francisco SLA chapter, San Francisco Bay Area, whatever they call it. And the other one I think you should take a look at is Sparrow.com, which has pinboards for 60 million scientific articles. Take a look at these, very interesting. The stuff that is going on in publishing is amazing in what they are looking at in terms of using artificial intelligence to detect fake articles, to detect plagiarism. Take a look at something like Unsilo.ai, which has made deals with most of the major publishers now. It uses NLP. It finds peer reviewers. Statreviewer.com generates these reviews for scientific manuscripts to make sure that the publisher doesn't get involved in publishing fake research. Over in science, we have infochem.de, German company, does mining for chemistry, data mining in chemistry, does entity extraction for chemistry. The patent literature, there's incredible stuff going on with the patent literature. I always thought I'll be dead honest, searching the patent literature has always terrified me because it's really difficult and it's hard to understand what the real intent is of a patent. IEEE has not totally solved this, but they've come awfully close. So take a look at that. Legal searching, there's an article in the September-October issue of Online Searcher. You'll see a common theme here, talking about all of the stuff that's going on in legal. And a lot of it is predictive analytics. It's not helping Amy at the moment, I think, but it is helping lawyers to determine who's the best judge. And a lot of these companies are doing very similar things, using artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, to determine what's the best court to try a case in, who's the best judge to bring your case to. All kinds of things going on in current awareness, also relying on machine learning, NLP, trying to classify stories, trying to bring the most relevant stories to you based on what your actual needs are. Indexing and metadata, all kinds of things going on here, as well as people try and use these technologies to create metadata. And my question on all this was, is this going to replace thesauri? So I was actually visiting with the new-ish head of Dialogue, which is a ProQuest company, and just renamed itself as Dialogue Solutions. And the head of the company now has a background in chemistry. He came from Beilstein originally. And I said, so when will we get to the point where the artificial intelligence companies can actually create all the thesauri and we can just throw all the indexers out the window? And he said, never. He's wrong. Chatbots and personal assistants, we've heard a lot about that during even just today of this conference, so I'm really not going to go into it. The stuff Greg was talking about this morning, Worthington Library, we wrote about that in Online Searcher. Talk to books. If you haven't looked at this, go take a look at it because it is absolutely fascinating as a way to take a piece of text, put it into Talk to Books, and it will come back and suggest other books to you. It's really cool. Subscription databases also has stuff like did you mean, others searched for. So far, it's not overriding your search strategy and saying, as Google does, I'm smarter than you are. You're just a librarian. I'm Google. I know best. We don't see that from our subscription databases. Cross your fingers this never happens. But some things do go a bit wacky. So this is from EBSCO Academic Search Premier. You put in the term women coders, and it comes back to say, did you mean female models? What? Okay, is it just women? Well, no, because if you put in male coders, there is no suggestion at all that you're looking for a male model. And if you go over to ProQuest and you put in exactly the same thing, it comes back and simply gives you research results on women coders. A couple of library initiatives I wanted to bring to your attention. Montana State University is doing some stuff with algorithmic awareness for digital literacy. The University of Oklahoma Libraries is doing the PAIR project. PAIR stands for Project Artificial Intelligence Registry. It's trying to create a global directory for all the AI projects that are going on in higher ed. And we've always, as librarians, tried to assess what we're doing in terms of statistics. The possibility exists that some of the artificial intelligence technologies could help us with this. I warn you about the creativity piece that I mentioned in the first slide there. How does a data-driven AI know that your school has added a new department, and therefore you should be putting some resources into materials for that department? How does it know you actually did away with the theater department or something, and so you shouldn't have anything over there? So you have to be aware of what the training set is, again. You have to know how to override some of the algorithms, which means you have to make the stuff transparent. So it does give us new ways to explore the statistics that we already have. Doesn't help us a bit with Google because we don't have their statistics. And predictive analytics is great unless the predictions go in a straight line, which is just the wrong way to do predictive analytics. So what is the future of search? Asking you some questions. If AI determines relevancy, where's the human empathy in this? Where do we... Who spots the anomalies? Who says, well, that doesn't make any sense? We tend to be involved in long-tail research. That's not helpful if algorithms are based on popularity. We have privacy issues. Google apparently does not. Neither does Facebook. We have control issues because there are things that we ought to be able to control. We ought not to cede control to a web search engine. Will we ever have cyborg librarians? Will we ever get to the point where when we think it is a search? We're back to Star Trek. What about answers before you search? I know you want to answer this question. I realize you have not asked this question, but I know that this is the answer. So is this the end of search as we know it? What's happening in your libraries? Are you doing anything with AI? Are you doing anything with any of the machine learning or deep learning or predictive analytics? Anything that you're doing there, I would love to know about. And with that, I'm going to invite the other speakers up here, and we will invite questions from all of you guys. So, I'm going to start actually by asking you guys a question, which is, we've talked about robots, we've talked about some old school technologies, bookmarklets and all kinds of stuff. We've talked about visualizing search results. We've talked about artificial intelligence. If you had, for your libraries, a wish list that would encompass any of the things we've talked about, what would be on your wish list? What would you like to see? We know that Amy wants docket research totally automated. We got that one. We got that. But
It's just because I don't know what I'm doing.
So, anybody have something that really, I mean, boy, if it could only do this, I would be so happy.
Yeah.
Anybody? Why is there no local search? Sorry? Oh, music. Hum the melody. So you want a search engine? So why don't we have a search engine that will let you hum the notes and tell you what that is? Actually, turn that on. And you had something to say about that. You were going to say something about Shazam, but speak into that microphone, please.
Right there. Is that it?
Yeah. Turning it on usually helps.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, it does. Well, we were all thinking, we were thinking of like Shazam certainly is one way, but I seem to recall that there was some experimentation in that regard. What we need is a few music librarians here who would be able to answer that.
Yeah, where are music librarians? Good point.
You know, techies and music actually go together very well.
They do go together very well. There was some experimental research being done at the University of Illinois by Stephen Downey, Downie. Look up what he's done. I don't know what he's doing lately, but I know that at one point that is exactly what his research project was, is hum me a few bars and I'll tell you what it is. But it would certainly make sense. I'm wondering, actually, with Google, with this Bach thing that it did, if it can analyze 306 Bach choral harmonies, why couldn't it actually create something exactly like what he's talking about?
Maybe they already have, we just don't know it.
Speak into the microphone.
Maybe they already have and we just don't know it because they're really good at not telling us what they do.
They are, yeah, right. Anybody else? Or just general questions? Did you have something? Yeah. If you have a new question, please go ahead. Or hum a few bars while you're
I was thinking about that first presentation by Amy when she was saying, oh, if I could only have a robot do this or that. Well, I don't know, wouldn't you think that your search engines would have a feedback box and you say, yeah, do this with this type of search. And I mean, and they could collect that kind of data and then make those things available.
So wouldn't it be nice if there was a feedback mechanism so that Amy could get her wishes fulfilled?
I mean, I definitely mention those things to my sales reps for these databases, but they just sort of glaze over. I mean, sometimes they sort of always respond with like, I'm the only person doing something like that, but I don't think that's true. I'm sure there's other people looking for complaints, but yeah, I mean, I would love it if they took it seriously, because to me, it doesn't seem that hard to build something like that into the database.
Outside of college so they can all ask.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, actually. Yeah, actually, because I was doing some work on a talk I'm giving on agile management techniques that'll be tomorrow. But anyway, advertising. But there is something called a product owner, and I was one of those when I was in IBM for a while, where there are people that do want to know those kinds of things. What do people want? And the second question is, are you the only one, or are there lots of people, because they want to ultimately monetize it and make a lot of money. So if you can get your colleagues to say, you know, we all are thinking this way, and with our vendors, this is one important thing to remember about those wonderful vendor partners, is they're developing things all the time. And tomorrow I'm talking about bibliometrics and altmetrics, and part of that, you know, which is scholarly analytics, and part of that is definitely an iterative process, or process, depending on which country you're from. And so they want to know those kinds of things. So if 10 people, but from certain kinds of organizations, whether big or small, or certain demographics, and that could be anything, you know, want to do something, there is somebody who's interested. That's why, you know, for instance, I described what I was doing today, and the co-founder is the one who responded to me, which I was kind of shocked at. But, you know, you can tell Silicon Valley people are always that way, you know, which is great. They want to know, what are you thinking? What is it you need? I've never heard this angle before, that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely. And the reps are not the ones, but the reps will tell you who in the organization that you could talk to. In most cases, when I was at my old big company, we always referred those kinds of things to our research side or to other people. And I know the people in ProQuest, the old ProQuest, which is now Dialogue again, everything old is new again.
There you go.
You know, some of those folks are certainly interested in that.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure. So absolutely talk to them.
Okay, you had a question over here.
Question about music sources.
Music sources.
I haven't been a music librarian for over 25 years.
We have the music librarian, okay.
All about music librarian.
Well, that's all right.
And were at that time two print sources where you could look up the tune and find out what it was from. And one of them went very simply by whether the tune went up or down, and the composer named it up down.
Okay, so print sources that you could look this up in, and
If you have further questions, the Music Library Association has its own discussion list called
Perfect.
MLA-L. I can't give you more than that. And they're very open to questions if you want to find out what the current status is.
okay. So he's suggesting that you check with the Music Library Association, and they have a listserv, MLA-L. So check there. Question in the back there.
Yeah, so I have a comment and an observation. So as far as when you talk to database vendors, keep in mind too whether we are their direct user or are our patrons the direct user. I actually tend to find they respond more positively when you say, the students want to be able to do this. Even if it's something I think we should have to do, they respond better if you're saying, the students keep asking to be able to do this.
And just along those lines, just sorry to interrupt you, but just to say too, like I don't work at a university library, but just if I think if I said, you know, the testifying experts need to see these things, you know, the attorneys are asking for, you're right. I mean, you hate to sort of like put yourself down lower, but I think you need to do what's effective, so.
Well, I mean,
Do what works, yeah.
And I say to them, they're like, why don't we get this library education as part of our curriculum? And I say, I can go tell your instructors this, but you need to tell them.
Right.
They're going to listen to you. You're not going to listen to the librarian who says, you know, all your students want to know, why aren't we in the classroom with you?
Yeah.
That's not where that's not going to be effective.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I wasn't in here for the whole visualization talk. So this thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if you talked about it. So in Chrome, in the Chrome browser, I do a PubMed search. I'm at a health sciences library, and so I'm displaying 200 results with abstracts, and I can do Control F, so find in my browser. And if you've never noticed, if you look to the right-hand scroll bar, it seems to do a frequency distribution of your control find terms,
Right.
which is fun. But by and large, the only thing I have thought of that I could use it for in any real way is if all of my, if it's bunched up at the top or bunched up at the bottom, it may indicate that I'm using a term that's more in favor now or used to be more in favor. But other than an oddity, I haven't really figured out much to do with it.
Right. Well, and that's why in my talk, when I talked about these bubbles and density of color and whatnot as one example, that, and I think is doing something like that with their engines. there could be some good reasons, because you say, oh, this is prevalent now, and it's no longer, or this was prevalent at a certain time period. And that really gets, when I was in the biotech industry, names of products or that were not officially FDA approved yet, or like certain other kinds of things. Internally, we wanted to know what was used at a certain time period and that kind of thing. So there are some good uses to that that's different from, gee, what's popular? Are the Kardashians popular yet again, or something? Who cares? Honestly. But,
Has anyone ever
yeah.
been asked to research the Kardashians? Oh, good.
Just rich.
Thank goodness.
People who want to know think they know how to search everything anyway.
Well, that is true. That is so true. We are out of time, so it's time for the reception. And one suggestion I have for you, as we've been having these discussions about our vendors, go over to the exhibit area and ask them what they're doing in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of data visualization. Get a conversation started with them, and then maybe they will pay attention to us. So thank you all very much. Thanks to the panel.